this camera keeps popping up in my videos, so I thought I'd do a quick video on it. I won't go into huge specifications with it, I'll just talk you around some of its features. Okay, so this is the Pentax K1. It's the only full-frame digital camera that Pentax make. Bit of history tip first of all. So for years Pentax were running with a film camera called the LX, which was their professional camera. And then when they moved into autofocus, it was sort of replaced with the Z1, which is this. And then that was updated to the Z1P, which is actually this one. A great robust camera. This went for years. This thing ran for years. Used by the press a lot. Really solid, lots of functions. Great piece of equipment. And then they sort of went back to the drawing board for their next camera. And they sort of redesigned the whole thing. So they went with this, which is the Pentax MZS. This is one of my favorite cameras. It's an amazing thing. They moved where the control surfaces were. It feels right. It's great, but it was a film camera. This was actually also the basis of their Pentax were designing a full frame digital camera, and it was going to be in this body. I'll put up a photo of it. And so that was going to be their foray into full frame digital, but for some reason they didn't go ahead. I think Contact released a full frame digital, but Pentax didn't. So they went with cropped sensor cameras going forwards. And it was only, we had to wait until 2016 until Pentax finally released the K1. I bought this in, I think, May 2016. What's that, 6 years ago? Can't be. Yeah. So I bought this in May 2016 when it first came out. The reason behind it is obviously I've got a lot of Pentax glass and cameras. I mean, that was before I bought this. But also, it was incredibly cheap for a full frame camera. I think it was £1,800 when it came out. It was a lot cheaper than the rest. Now, much like the Fuji X100 camera that I still got, the original one, when they built this thing, they basically knocked it out of the park. I can't see a situation where I'd ever need to upgrade this camera. And I think if it broke, because you can buy the second hand now for £800, I'd buy another one. I'm one of these people that I like to separate photography from cinematography. So if I go and do filming, I'll have a film camera and like an iPhone to do snaps. If I'm doing photography, I'll take a camera that's more focused on photography, or a film camera. Well, I'll normally take a digital and a film, but I'm not really interested in the hybrids. I did have a Nikon D90 when it first came out, when they first started to do video, and I just didn't get on with having all that stuff. And I know it's an essential part of the ecosystem now, these hybrid cameras, Fujis, and even the Leica Q3's just come out with 8K video. I maybe that's old, but I like things that have separate, I'd rather eat with a knife and a fork than a spork type thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like, I like separate sort of uses for things. So they're more focused on what they do. Now, it's a brave move with camera manufacturers to do that this day, because they have to pick up a bigger market as possible, because their competition is iPhones, which can do video and photos. So, but Pentax haven't updated this. Well, they did a K2 version with some enhanced features, but it's the same camera. I think it's got quicker autofocus and something to do with the pixel shift thing, but not much. So they just stuck with this. The video on this is atrocious. It's just appalling. But I don't think I've actually even bothered to fire it up. Anyway, I could talk about the camera itself quickly. Okay, so it's, I think, 36 megapixels, full frame. It's got, the big thing is, it's got 14.6 stops of dynamic range at 100 ISO. Now, that's enormous. If you look, I think it's like DXL or something, it's still the 5th highest rated sensor for dynamic range. It's incredible. Now, obviously with sensors, you get like, every sensor has a fixed ISO. It's like built in, a floor. And then as you increase the ISO, which is basically gain, your dynamic range drops away. Now, this does it quite gracefully. I know there's cameras with dual gain, but that's just additional circuitry. But they all have a base ISO. So 100 on this thing, you get 14.6 stops. That's huge. And if you're like a landscape photographer and you're doing sunsets and all this, it's like literally all going to be in there for you. So that's amazing. It's got a great sensor. Autofocus, you know, I don't shoot sports. I've shot loads of portraits and people like that. You don't need high speed autofocus for portraits. And like reportage stuff, it's fine for that, absolutely fine. So yeah, but it's not, it's nothing like a million dot things they have on some of these cameras today that can track products in shot and cats. Doesn't do that. It's like got 33 focus points and off you go. So yeah, autofocus is not the greatest thing on the planet, but I don't really care about that. But it's got some other funky features built in, which were quite funny at the time. I don't think anybody had done it. They've got a thing called pixel shift resolution, which when it came out in 2016, I think was quite new. I think some of the cameras have it now. Some of the Olympus have it now. And basically what it does, it takes 4 photos at the same time, but it moves the sensor 1 pixel left, 1 pixel down and across. And then it combines that image into a gigantic DNG file, which is still 36 megapixels, or a JPEG. Now, if you combine them, you get so much detail, because one of the problems with Bayer sensors is they chuck away about 1/3 of the information when you take a photograph. There was another brand of Sigma had a different type of sensor, a foveal sensor, and that was done with layers, and that sort of like gives you much more detail. So you'd sort of like get, I don't know, a 24 megapixel sensor would literally give you a medium format type image. So it's very, very clever. But they do it with pixel shift. You have to have the camera still for pixel shift. You can have a little bit of motion in the frame. It's not super clever. I mean, if you were doing macros and stuff like that with a static object, it's incredible, you know, like a watch or something, because you've got that additional detail. And then, you know, you get it and you can focus stack it or whatever, however you do it. The other funky feature this has is a thing called Astro Tracer, whereby basically it's got GPS, so it knows where it is. And if you set it up for long exposure looking at stars, it actually will move the sensor plane to track the movement of the sky, so you don't get star streaks. That's really clever. I've used it once in Greece, I think, and it worked really well. But it's just an odd feature. It's an incredibly robust camera. It's crazily well made. I mean, I don't think it's the same camera, but it's just a thing about Pentax cameras being built well. There's a video online, I don't know if it's the K1, I think it might be another one, where some soldier in Iraq buries his Pentax in sand, then takes it out of the sand, walks straight into the shower, showers with it, and then carries on firing. Obviously, I mean, this, you can, if you've got a water-resistant lens on it, you can submerge it in water, get it wet. I mean, so it's great. You take it out, you know, but you're not going to get hit by the elements using one of these things. And the other thing that it does, which I really like, it's really, really easy to use old Pentax glass. So I've got what's that? Pentax Super Mini. If I pop off the 50 on there and just pop it on the front of the camera, finds the red dot, find the red dot, there it is. And now it's really simple to use it. You just put the camera into manual mode. I've got it on AF because there's a thing called catch in focus on here that I use quite a lot, which is where an object comes into, you hold down the shutter, hold down the shutter release, and the moment that the object comes into focus, it takes the photograph. So I use that quite a lot for macros and things like that. Turn it on, fires up, it asks me for the focal length, so I'll put in 50. So that can correct the lens distortion. And then if you want to take a meter reading, you just hit, there's a green button. All these Pentax cameras have this, it's IF on these older ones. Is it green on this one? Yeah, it's on the front of this. They will have this like sort of function button, the green button resets everything. It's on every single camera. You can see there's 3 generations of Pentaxes that have the same thing. So if I hit the green button, oh, actually there's one setting I need to set. You need to use aperture ring to disable, and then it'll fire without the aperture ring being set on automatic. So now, if I press it, it'll take a meter reading. Oh. Let's get that on there. And then get it into focus and it'll fire. And that's it really. I mean, it's really simple to set up and use those older lenses. So I'll put them back on the other one. There's just a couple of buttons you need to press, and you can get the thing firing old, how old is that? It's from the 70s. Old Pentax glass. So yeah, I mean, it's a great camera. I can't see myself changing this. I don't know why. I mean, it's full frame, it's 36 megapixels, pictures are great. But the funny thing is, and it's a bit odd for camera manufacturers to do this, even, hang on, was it 20, so it's 6 years old, 7 years old? I'm still getting firmware updates for it. And that's quite rare for cameras of that age, because I think the whole spin with consumer cameras is basically, you know, they'll give you about 4 or 5 years with it, then they just drop it because they're rolling the other ones in. But Pentax have just carried on with this. But yeah, no, fantastic, great camera, and it sort of does everything I need. So that's it. My 3 digital cameras are an iPhone, an original X100, and this. And yeah, so if you see one of these, they're 800 quid. You can get them second hand from like places like MPB, or £900. You buy them new for about 1600. You know, and you want a full frame digital camera and you're not bothered about video functionality, I'd get one of these. Great cameras. Anyway, thanks for watching.